What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions episode. My name is Cameron Selby, and we are going to be diving into the Week 11 showdown slate between the New England Patriots and the New York Jets. We appreciate you guys tuning in thus far in the season. It's been a hell of a ride, so we're going to keep on going. Last time these two teams met on a Thursday night matchup last year, we had the nuts, we had a optimal line, and so I'm hoping we can do that in a row. We had a couple of slates in recent weeks that we've took down as well, so I want to keep on going with that momentum. I know it's a big spread. Patriots looking at like a 13-point favorite right now, but that doesn't mean we can't still have fun on showdown slates. The last time we did take down a showdown slate was a 30-cent blowout, and it worked out the way it did because we built the optimal line. So there's always fun ways to make blowouts fun. Hopefully it's not as ugly as we have seen in recent showdowns. Last week was an awful, atrocious watch, and it was even harder because of the fact that we didn't have the line. Similar to the Monday night one, even though it cashed. Sunday night, I think it was the same similar ordeal. Ugly games. Hopefully we can right that ship and have a better showing this week. And so with that said, if you are new to the channel, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think about this slate, how you're approaching it, how you're attacking it, how you want to get different. We also have a Discord that we're going to be interacting with frequently when we're talking about props, pick'ems, spreads, all that fun stuff. So get in there as well. I'm excited to break this down. So let's just get rocking and rolling. All right. So kicking it off, we're going to talk about the big road underdogs, and that is the New York Jets coming off back-to-back wins after being the last team to win a game this season. They are 2 wins straight. Haven't lost in a month, but now are 13-point dogs, and it looks pretty disgusting offensively. We're going to have to skip some names. Garrett Wilson came back this past week due to from a knee injury, and it looks like he re-aggravated that, left the game. He's already doubtful. Don't expect him to play, so that is going to open up a lot of unknown, a lot of value, and we can see how we can approach and attack that going forward with all these names that people are going to be mixing and matching. So we're going to click a bunch of names and go from there. The most expensive receiver for the Jets, 3,400. That is very telling. We were going to click them all, but we are almost going to run out of room. I'll put Isaiah Williams. I know that you may not know who that is. I barely know who that is. But regardless, there's 6 names I want to bring up because it is worth mentioning the unknown of how we're going to approach, this passing game. And I don't even know if it's worth building behind. Just bringing up Justin Fields this past game, even in a win, 54 passing yards. Most of that came on a 42-yard screen pass to Breece Hall. So overall, 12 passing yards in the game. They still won. How does that happen in modern day football? I don't know, but it did. And he also had a 46 and 45 passing yard event in recent weeks as well. I'm an advocate of Justin Fields getting an opportunity. I know it's the Jets, but you got to throw for more than 60 passing yards, man. You've got to. Because of that, it makes it really hard to trust anything on this slate. There are people that are going to project well because of the value. Most of the way how this slate is going to work out on whether you take down cash or not cash, it could very well come down to how do you got to fit some jet in. It's got to be at the very least a 5-1 build. Who can you be comfortable with? First up, we'll talk about Arian Smith. He's been mostly their return man, but in recent weeks, he's gotten a decent amount of snaps, has done nothing with it for obvious reasons. They haven't done much in the passing game at all. But it's worth noting, Garrett Wilson, the first game that he did miss, 92% of the snaps. That was also with Josh Reynolds in the fold, and then Josh Reynolds went down, got hurt. And then the following week, without both of them, went down to 42%. So didn't do the most with it. But then this past week, with Garrett Wilson leaving the game early after just 19 snaps, leading the team with 67% of the snaps, had 0 targets, 1 carry for 13 yards. He's 1,600. He was and is kind of going to be on the field the second or third most, at the very least, out of all these guys and names. So it's just worth mentioning. Lazard did miss this past week. Actually, it was an inactive. He was a healthy scratch. So both AD Mitchell, Alan Lazard were healthy scratches. I would anticipate at least one of the two to be on this slate being viable, at least. AD Mitchell, he was the guy that was traded, former second-round pick. From the Colts, logjam at receiver because everybody else was doing well. We believed in him a lot in best ball, thought he had a chance to break out. And really this game in week 4 where he had the touchdown that he dropped at the 1-yard line, and then very later in the game got called for a holding penalty that would have had the go-ahead touchdown late for Jonathan Taylor. And then after that, they barely played him the rest of the season. So first game with the Jets as a member of the Jets was a healthy scratch. But now that Garrett Wilson's out, they may ask him to step into a role, whatever that may be. Being $3,000, it's a dart throw, but it is the biggest unknown out of all of them because he has not played as a Jet yet. Talking about Tyler Johnson, though, Tyler Johnson, I remember playing him as minimum price guy with the Bucks, him being a relief, a showdown threat. I mean, at least in the recent games he's been on the field. The last 2 games, I guess cumulatively, has had the most total snaps, 87 over the last 2 games, 78% tied for the lead with Allen Lazard in week 8. And then that led to actual production, 3 for 64 and a score. The previous game before that had 3 for 60, so he at least did something with his opportunities. And then this past week had about 63%, but with Justin Fields not getting anything going, did not catch his only target. Obviously, he's the most priced guy for a reason. He's the only guy that has really shown any kind of, I wouldn't even say floor, any kind of production. No one else has gone for 40 yards in a game this season for the Jets, and he's gone for 60 twice in recent weeks with his opportunities. So probably by default, he's my favorite. He's the most expensive. I hope that means that his ownership isn't as popular, but everybody's going to be mixing and matching these guys. John Mechie, former Texan, trying to get more opportunities after not working out in Philly. First game as a Jet, played 8 snaps, 2 opportunities, -4 yards, so less yards than we did as a community going into Sunday. But he's the cheapest, so if he could possibly be on the field more, I don't know. I don't know, man. What can I say that is going to help convince you to play one of these guys? I really can't say with confidence. I probably will omit certain guys. Plus, on top of that, we're going to have to watch the inactive list coming out because, like I said, AD Mitchell and Lazard, both inactive last week as healthy scratches, not with injury. So with Garrett Wilson being out, somebody should be elevated. Who is it? And if they both are, that just complicates things even more if they have 6 active receivers. So mix and match, play around. We're going to do some last guys in, kind of making things work, but it's all gross. It's all disgusting. And I'm done talking about them. Going to the tight end position, at least, though. Mason Taylor has kind of overtaken the role as tight end 1 on the team. Basically, the entire season so far has led the tight ends and snaps. He's been up and down in terms of production, has had some boom games, has done well for us on main slates before, back-to-back weeks, Miami and Dallas, we called him out, and he produced for over 11 fantasy points, big value based on his price point. And then he's had some decent games since then. Cincinnati, one of the worst teams against tight ends, had 5 for 34 and his only and first touchdown of his career. And then recently, it's just if there's any kind of 60-plus passing yard upside by Justin Fields, he's a beneficiary. I'm pretty shocked at $4,000 being his price tag. Naturally, based from a price point perspective, he might be the best value and safest guy all in one. And so basically the way I would probably approach it, because most people are probably going to be doing New England builds that are 5-1 in advantage of the stars and then fitting in a cheap Patriot and then Mason Taylor. So if you are going to fall into Mason Taylor, just leave some salary. That's how you're going to be different if you're going to be doing 5-1 builds, because that's how the most of the public is going to be approaching this slate. And then otherwise, Jeremy Ruckert, for what it's worth, he's $600. He's played over 50% of the snaps each of the last 2 games. Has had a target in 3 straight games. 5 of the last 6, he's had a target. Had 4 targets against Dallas. Only 2 games this year without a target. For $600, if you're trying to fit all these expensive guys, which the Patriots are really heavily priced this week, and it's uncomfortable, but I like that because it doesn't mean that somebody is going to be 99% owned in addition to Drake May. So I like that the prices are uncomfortable for the Patriots side. And if you're going to fit in all these expensive ones, maybe you do got to punt all the way down to Jeremy Ruckert, and maybe he inherits another catcher target. If he gets 3.4 fantasy points, that's a great play at $600. If he gets 6.8 points, that's optimal. So it is on the board. Like I said, only 2 games this year without a target. Most of the time he's been tight end 2 and has been flirting with at least 40% of the snaps in majority of the games this year, regardless of game script. New England this year, bottom 5 against tight ends. Maybe you just punt all the way down, and that's how you really go about the Jets. Brought out Justin Fields briefly. Yeah, it's all rushing upside or nothing else. The Patriots are one of the best against running backs. Breece Hall, a huge game with 147 all-purpose yards. That's how they got to a bunch of points with Cincinnati. And then last week followed that up with 19.5 against the Cleveland Browns to upset them. Had 125 all-purpose yards, receiving touchdown. So he's probably the only guy they're going to lean on to get opportunities. So by default, he could be a 20 opportunity running back. But if they don't score a touchdown and he just gets like 8 points, that's not going to be enough at 10-2. So it just depends on how close you think that the Jets can keep this game aligned. And if it's going to be another ugly game or a blowout, it's going to be hard to get to. Justin Fields with the rushing upside, it's not like he's omitted. I wouldn't consider him a ultimate easy fade because he has so much rushing upside. But shoot, it is just not looking good. And if he has another outing where he's got less than 50 or 60 passing yards in the first half and it's a blowout, they may bench him for Tyrod Taylor. And because Tyrod Taylor is already priced at $9,000, I think that's Vegas telling you that he's on a pretty short leash. So if that's the case, and that's what we're going to go about things, maybe he is an ultimate fade because he has the risk of also being benched on the road as a 13-point dog. But who knows? Really tough to think about. Nick Folk revenge game? Maybe. I mean, he's had at least 7 fantasy points in all but one game this year, shockingly, as a member of the Jets. So he's kicking and he's made every single field goal, 19 for 19 this year. He has not missed a kick this year. They don't score a lot, but if they kick a field goal, he's been making it. It's also against the Patriots, who Nick Folk has been a member of. $4,600, pretty reasonable because most of the accurate kickers and the consistent kickers have been over $5,000 this year. I think people are realizing the good leverage on slates like this is to be overweight to the kicker position. And so if he's shockingly safe and say they only get 2 field goals and that's all they score, that's minimum 6, 7, 8 fantasy points. And $4,600, that could be the perfect way to just get a mid-price guy down this low. I mean, I barely even break down kickers, but it's just worth mentioning because the Jets is really hard. It's an eyesore trying to figure out who can get you more than 6. Isaiah Davis has been getting the RB2 snaps from the team. He actually projects decent. I mean, about 6.5 fantasy points from a $4,200 guy. I think it mainly is because of the pass catching upside. In 3 of the 5 games, he had at least 4 targets. So the safe floor somewhat of him being roughly 5+ fantasy points in this stretch is pretty welcoming. Obviously, they rode the hot hand with Breece Hall and just giving him a lot of opportunities. 42 is kind of rich. I'd probably side with the New England running backs instead of the Jets running backs because because the Patriots are so good against the run game. But yeah, it's rough. It's tough. Like I said, everybody's going to be on 5-1 builds for the Patriots. So the only way to get different is leaving salary on the table or playing a couple of these guys. And maybe both of them pan out. And the Patriots, because of their high price tags, maybe 4-2 or 3-3 builds are viable. On the New England side, first off, you're playing Drake May. How many times are you playing him a captain? That is your question. He's $12,000. I'm glad he's that expensive. We haven't seen a $12,000 quarterback in a while. I'm glad at this pricing. It looks terrible and disgusting based on the inconsistencies most of these guys have been. Travion Henderson has one big game and all of a sudden he's 10-6. Why does that make sense? I don't care. I'd rather it be that way because I don't want him to be 99% owned. I don't want him to be 85% owned. I don't want him to be 80% owned. And then everybody picks Drake May, Henderson, Diggs, maybe a Booty or a Henry, and then the one Mason Taylor, and everybody's got the same line. I don't want that, and we're going to be trying to build ways to be different in some way, shape, or form. There are some Q tags that we got to monitor, all on the New England side. First off, Kayshon Boutte missed last week due to a hammy. Usually hammies are a multi-week thing, especially if you are on the short week. So all this is estimated, walk through practice reports. He was limited. Everybody else is limited. It is worth noting just because of the snaps, he was going consistently as the wide receiver 1, even though they don't have a normal wide receiver 1 workload that gets 85 to 90% of the snaps. He's leading the team in snaps and hovering about 70%. But he left the game in week 9, and Stephon Diggs, Mac Hollins made the most of the opportunity in terms of snaps, getting over 60%. Kyle Williams had the biggest bump, got all the way to 46%, just didn't do anything with it. But Demario Douglas had the 100-yard day, despite being 5th on the team in snaps. So that was the concerning thing for me this past week because he looked like he was popping, and I didn't want to face the chalk. I'll click the names just so we can see the price points for these receivers. You see Boutte's Q tag, so you know where he is. But Douglas, you've got Mac Hollins, you've got Kyle Williams. That's it. That's all you got. I'm not even going to put Efton Chisholm, who's only played more than 4 snaps one time this season. So it's these guys. And then Kayshon Boutte, if he does end up playing, but that's still a very, very rich price tag. But Stephon Diggs, he's been the biggest floor of all these receivers, has had at least 10 fantasy points in 6 of the last 7 games. The problem is that after that Buffalo game, that big upset win against his former team, he didn't really inherit just consistent 8 to 10 targets that you like to see from a wide receiver 1. He's not getting the big games. Only one time has he gone north of 50 yards since then, but he's scored in 3 straight games. And so he's got the end zone targets. And that's what's a good thing about that. Right at before the half on a 4th and goal at the 1, they end up just throwing a post fade. It's old classic early 2000 football at the goal line. That's kind of how it felt, scoring the touchdown. And so that's all 3 of his touchdowns this year. He's the safest guy, but he's $98 So very expensive for the lack of ceiling that he's had other than one true game, or even 2, because he's gone over 100 yards in back-to-back of those games, but tough to get to. Demario Douglas, I mentioned, had the 100-yard game despite having only 24% of the snaps, followed up his big week with less snaps. So that tells me it was kind of a fluky game where he just had the deep ball, got 58-yard touchdown, and then didn't do anything with it, didn't increase snaps at all, just had 3 touches and opportunities. But when you're 6,200, I need more than just 3 opportunities or 3 touches a game. Outside of those games, he has not had more than 6 fantasy points. So $6,200, when you're touchdown or bust as a wide receiver, you're not getting snaps. I really don't want anything to do with him, and he's probably going to score just because I said that. At least Matt Collins is on the field, and he used to be on the field all the time when he was a Buffalo Bill, and he would just get 1 target a game. Well, at least recently, he's getting more targets. Like 2 of the last 3 games has had 7 and 10 targets respectively. 7 for 89, 6 for 106 was a season best performance on the year. Has had 2 touchdowns, mostly just kind of a non-factor. But if I'm going to pick one or the other, Matt Collins for 400 cheaper compared to Demario Douglas, I think is a no-brainer. On top of that, like I said, season best snap share last week in 79%, and that was without Kayshon Boutte. So if and when Kayshon Boutte misses again, I would anticipate Matt Collins getting most of the snaps. It just depends on if he's just going to be doing cardio or if they'll actually throw him the ball. That's just kind of what it comes down to for him. Kyle Williams, I mentioned, he was the biggest elevator in terms of snaps when Kayshon Boutte went out of the game in week 9. Went up to 46% of the snaps. And then in the full game without Kayshon Boutte last week, 56% of the snaps. Caught a 72-yard touchdown. And that's all. That's all he did. That was 72 out of 92 yards on the season. Came on that one play. So it was a great play, deep ball. Good thing he's $2,000, because similarly, if he was like $4,000 because of that deep ball, I would still want nothing to do with him. At least he's viable just because of his price. Looks like if Boutte does miss, he'll be on the field, but to each of their own. It depends on if you go just the 4 highest up top and you need to double punt. If you're going to, usually for the cheap guys, everybody's going to be putting in a jet. So you are different by putting in a cheap Patriot. Is he the guy? I'm not very sure. But then the tight end position, kind of a similar deal. And then the tight end position, it really comes down to, are you going to punt or are you going to just play the guy that's going to be getting most of the snaps? But Austin Hooper was concussed this past week, and he's been on the field. So he's been at least 50% of the snaps every single game except for week 1. So other than that, 1 to 2 targets a game. But again, since he's $1,400, it's also a tight end showdown slate. Tight ends have been awesome on showdowns this year. For $1,400, it's reasonable. But because he was concussed, I'm just going to do a large sample size of short week, probably won't play. And if he doesn't, Jack Westover would probably inherit most of the looks. He is $200. He's actually claimed to be a running back. Is he a running back or tight end? I guess he's a tight end based on the look of his face. I barely know who he is. But regardless, last week he had 15 snaps. The week before had about 46. He has not caught a pass this year. But because New England plays so many heavy 2 tight end sets, if and when Austin Hooper's out, he's a minimum price guy that's going to inherit over 40% of the snaps, probably 50%. So if that's the case, $200 is $200, and I like playing $200 plays if they're viable. So he's there. And then Hunter Henry, mainly it's because of his inconsistency, but I'm honestly surprised that they put him at $5,400, cheaper than Matt Collins, cheaper than Demario Douglas. Sure, I'm fine with him being below Stephon Diggs and Kayshon Boutte, but I mean, we just saw Dallas Goedert, who's been touchdown or bust in a lot of the games this year, at $7,400, and he was not projecting well. He still ended up working out, but he was all the way at $7,400. Hunter Henry, north of 80% of the snaps in the majority of the games this year. The targets are inconsistent. The production's inconsistent. Like I've said on main sites before, he only goes off when I don't play him. But at the same time, I haven't been playing him lately, and he still hasn't gone off. So I guess it's starting to level out a little bit. But he's had games and upside like this, and he's also had games where he just doesn't catch passes. Obviously, people being out, Austin Hooper being out, Kayshon Boutte being out, doesn't hurt him. by any stretch, and he's $5,400. That's a very reasonable price. I'm probably going to be in on some Hunter Henry. Decent matchup, and he's going to be on the field. $5,400 is what it is. Nobody you're going to really feel comfortable about with the Patriots, but you're going to have to play some guys and take stands, and I think that's one stand I'm comfortable taking is Hunter Henry. Being cheaper than all these guys, he'll probably be popular because he is sticking out like that. But if he is, it is what it is. I don't mind that price tag. And then running back situation, I mentioned earlier, Trayvon Henderson, finally the breakout touchdown and also the game sealing touchdown. He had like 4 or 5 fantasy points at half. Again, most of the snaps, but then he early in the second half breaks off a big touchdown and then seals it with the 69-yarder at the end of the game. He did get tweaked up. I think the knee injury that has been limiting him, or he was at least a full participant. He's going to play, but basically he was rolled up on when Drake May tried to scramble out of bounds and then just kind of got caught up in the wreckage of things. But with Ramondre Stevenson, has missed the last 2 games because of a toe injury. He has not been good this year, but he has been taking opportunity away from Trayvon Henderson, and that's the frustrating part. So if Trayvon Henderson doesn't play, I'm still interested in playing Trayvon Henderson at 10-6. If Stevenson is in, obviously I want nothing to do with him at that price point. But I am encouraged because of the snaps and the way that they've been distributed in both of the games without Ramondre. In week 9, Henderson did not score a touchdown, but he had 20 opportunities, 87 all-purpose yards, and he just didn't score. But very solid value. He was like 4,900 on the main slate. 12.7 I will live with every single day. And then the week after, followed that up, Terrell Jennings went out due to injury. Henderson ended up getting even more work, 84% of the snaps. Obviously a big day, 31 fantasy points, and that is the only reason why he's 10-6. So like I said, I am super happy that he is that price because I would anticipate people doing builds would probably want to play Diggs over him. Obviously, Dig May is going to go in everybody's line, and anybody that doesn't play him, I appreciate you paying the rate kind of thing. He's kind of just standalone by himself. Maybe people do go boom boom, but I would anticipate Stevenson being out one more week. And if that's the case, Henderson, I'm more than fine with playing. I'm probably not going to captain him, but he's going to be in a lot of lines. Terrell Jennings, like I mentioned, he left the game due to injury. He didn't do a ton with his touches. He just happened to score against Atlanta. And then last week, 4 carries for 5 yards and didn't do a ton. Dearness Johnson, former Brown, relieved him and got about 6 snaps after that. And carry 1 yard. So I think it's Trayvon Henderson show, especially if Ramondre Stevenson misses. If Stevenson is back, $7,600 pretty reasonable. He's had 3 touchdowns in the 2 games before he did go out due to the injury against the Cleveland Browns a couple weeks back. But he was getting more and more opportunities because I think the Buffalo game was when Antonio Gibson went out for the year, hurt his knee on a kickoff. So since that game, had at least 13 opportunities every single game, $7,600. It's funny because he was the chalk of the chalk last year when I gave him an ultimate fade at 97% owned. And he fumbled, and the coach was so pissed they didn't put him back in the game. And it was awesome, and that was the reason they worked out so well. That's pretty much it on the Patriots. I will say 6,600, you rarely see defenses that expensive. I get it because they're going to project well, but 6,600, I'm glad they're priced that way because if you do think this is Jets aren't even going to score points or they're not even going to score a touchdown, $600, people are going to be more scared off of that, and they'd rather play the kickers. They'd rather play all these skill players for the New England Patriots. So I wouldn't anticipate them being more than 25% owned at that price. Maybe they will be. I don't know. But I don't think I can deal with them being a captain on this. If they were in the 5K range, they would be captain viable. I think I'm going to stay away, but they're flex viable is all I will say. With that said, though, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, go through some game script, must play, fade, contrarian play, all that fun stuff. In terms of this game, I think it's going to be as bad as it probably is on paper, but that doesn't mean, like I said, we can't have some fun. I'm going to say Patriots end up winning about 31-10. Sorry to the Jets fans. I just don't see a way that they keep this competitive. New England is the hottest team in football right now. One of the top teams in our power rankings, if you guys wanted to check that video out that we just released yesterday. But they're just better everywhere at this point. And the Jets, valiant effort, back-to-back wins. But I just don't see them really doing much, putting up a ton of points. I think they're going to struggle a lot. And if they don't have Garrett Wilson, it's going to be really tough to move the ball. So I'm going to say Patriots kind of controlled this game from the jump. Just kind of hold on top and just don't really let up until it's kind of out of hand. So 31-10 is going to be my score. That means that there's going to be Patriots scoring touchdowns. So we're going to have to figure out how they're going to be doing that. My ultimate must play, I'm not even going to say Drake May because of the fact that he is obviously going to be played in every line. He is going to be one of the highest owned guys, even though he's the highest priced guy. It's just to captain or to not captain. But my must play, I'm going to say Hunter Henry is my must play. That's crazy. I'd rarely go that cheap in terms of must plays, but I just like the price tag. Austin Hooper being out, that just adds even more tied in targets to him. Kayshon Boutte, I would anticipate missing one more week. And if that's the case, he's just going to be on the field about 80% of the snaps. $400 is very reasonable. I would anticipate he'll pull about 30% ownership, but I'd rather be massively overweight. If I play 3 lines, I'll play at least 2, possibly all 3 with him in there. I'm just going to lock and load him, say that he scores a touchdown, and go from there. Very high risk because he's been so up and down, but I think it's kind of the tides are turning. Used to always go off when I didn't play him. Now he's not going off when I don't play him, so maybe if I do play him, he'll go off for his one time. In terms of fades, I'm going to go ahead and say that the fade is Demario Douglas. I'm not a fan of the price tag at all. $6,200 is just way too expensive. Packing snaps, 4th on the team last week, 5th on the team the week before. He had a big, long touchdown. That was all he had. For what it's worth, Kyle Williams, who's $4,200, his receiving prop is 1 yard lower than him. That's just very telling based on how people anticipate his role and impact on this game. So I just want nothing to do with that price. He's not going to be that high owned anyways, but that's just, I'm not even considering him. And just because I said that, like I said, he's going to score 2 touchdowns. That's just how it works. For tournament play, this is such a unique slate because I have zero read because the Jets are basically, with all due respect, a practice squad room of wide receivers that are going to be playing all the snaps. So I can't give you a confident read on who is going to go off. So what I'm going to say is my contrarian play is a strategy. And that strategy is a 4-2 build for the Patriots and not a 5-1 build. I think a lot of people are going to be going the route of just routing, getting all the top studs for the Patriots, and then just finding one cheap jet. So the way to get different, I would say, is not only leaving salary on the table, that's always a way to get different, but picking 2 punts. Maybe it's a kicker plus one of those cheap receivers, or maybe both of those receivers, and each of them, because of the value, they end up working out because you're able to afford the other 4. I'm not even saying that or if you're going to say Breece Hall is going to by default get 20 plus opportunities and he's going to fall into 7 targets or fall into the end zone once, and a low scoring slate is going to end up where he gets about 16 fantasy points or 14 fantasy points and is still worth it at that price tag. I think a 4-2 build with 2 Jets is the strategy I think is a good approach, because I just don't think many people are going to be comfortable double punting with Jet players or fitting 2 Jets in general, because I think most people are going to want, if Stevenson is out, want to play May, Henderson, Diggs, and then figure it out. So if you put in Breece Hall, maybe that's a way to get different. Or, like I said, double punting with 2 Jet receivers. Maybe that's the way to go. Last week with the Raiders, similar situation where Jacoby Myers traded. It's unknown at receiver. A lot of people, like Trey Tucker, was priced by default because he was the wide receiver 1 in terms of snaps. And guess what? Dante Thornton catches the first pass. Tyler Lockett catches like 4 for 50 or 4 for 40, whatever it was. And guys that were Jack Besh, more popular of the tournament plays, way less snaps. So there's not really a good read. That's the way I'm thinking of approaching the tournament perspective of this slate. I'm sorry, it's a cop-out kind of, but at the same time, all of them are going to just be 10 to 20% owned, and there's not a specific read. I can't tell you which one I'm going to take a stand on. Maybe it's Tyler Johnson, but everybody else probably feels that way by default just because they're looking at box scores. So let's jump back over, start making some fun lines. I will say my biggest recommendation, if you do this, Drake May, 95 to 98% owned total. He's going to be like 35 to 40% owned at captain. The way to play him at captain, you've got to leave salary on the table. You can't just play a $0 Drake May captain lineup. Everybody will have that line. So I don't recommend zeroing out a line if you're going to put Drake May at captain. Drake May, awesome captain. He's by default just going to project the best. He's going to be positive leverage despite the ownership and all that stuff. I just highly recommend that you do that if you're going to go with those kinds of builds. But I want to start out, I want to see if we can fit all 3 of those and how gross we have to get. And honestly, you don't really have to get terribly gross. I wanted to put in Hunter Henry, my must play, and then you got $3,100 per. And that's kind of similar to what I was talking about if you want 2 Jets. Let's go all the way down. Oh, I only have Patriots. So that's why I couldn't see anybody. Let's go Mason Taylor, and then you got $2,200 left. Let's go Kyle Williams. That is a fun first build. The thing is, like I said, $200. I wish I had a little bit more salary. Maybe I could punt down to, like I said, a double jet receiver. John Mechie gets a little bit more run. Or you got Isaiah Williams, who inherited some snaps. Maybe that's a way to get a little bit different. It's not like Kyle Williams, even though he had a 72-yarder. Before that, he had 5 straight zeros and then a negative 0.2. So it's not like you're really getting way different or like more, have a much lower ceiling if he's not in your line. They have the same type of floor as he does, and people are going to be way less duping that, being 1,000 remainder, having 2 jets. So that's one thing to look about that. Let's do a different look. Let's go Hunter Henry at captain. Let's see what we can really do. If we can afford the big 4, that would be pretty cool. Let's go Hunter Henry, which should be about 8-1. And then you got the next guys. You got all 4 of them. And you got negative $700. So that's not possible. But even though that's not possible, you can still make things work. Easily, the first thing I would think about doing is going Mason Taylor once again. And then you pick a kicker. I'd say Nick Folk for the leverage, get $900 remainder. 2 jets. I think most people, if they were doing that route, they would go Borregales. And it's not like Borregales has done any better. Like I mentioned with Nick Folk, all but one game, he's been at least 7 fantasy points. And Andy has had a couple of big games, but most of his games have been below 7 fantasy points outside of those 3 field goal games with the Bills and the Browns. I don't anticipate the Patriots having problems scoring touchdowns. So unless they're long field goals, I would anticipate Folk being the safer of the plays. And it leaves $900 salary on the table for what it's worth. Let's do another look. Let's put Stephon Diggs at captain this time. Wide receiver 1 hits the end zone for the 4th straight game. You're obviously putting in Drake May every single time. And then let's see, this time we're going to put, let's say we try to fit in some Breece Hall this time and load up more on the New England pass catchers. If I'm going that route, I probably am going to do something like Ty Johnson. I'm going to put in something like Matt Collins. And then last guy in, that's 39. That's almost enough for Mr. Mason Taylor. Maybe we go down a little bit, and instead of that, we go, I don't want 3 jets. I told you I'm down to get different. I'm not getting that different. But yeah, you put Hunter Henry back in, that's 300. That's a 3-3 build. I'd probably rather Breece Hall still stay in that line, but then you go down from, let's say, Ty Johnson down to a Kyle Williams, and similar ordeal, about $1,700 salary table. That even is enough to afford Drake May back at captain, and you still have a decent amount of salary left over, $600. That's not too bad. 4-2 build. The 2 safest jets, in my opinion, at 10-2 and 4,000 respectively. You've got the tight end 1, the wide receiver 1, and then Kyle Williams as a boom tournament play with the ultimate captain to play. That's a pretty strong way about building this game. Let's, for whatever reason, say it's an ugly game similar to what it was last week with the Broncos and the Raiders, 10-7. Drake May's not involved on any touchdowns, so we got to put some Travion Henderson to captain. Let's say Ramondre's out and Henderson's going to get most of the workload, so we're going to have to figure out a way to make that work. Let's say this time we go double top running back instead of Stephon Diggs. Maybe Stephon doesn't score and he gets 8 to 10 fantasy points. That's not going to be enough in all likelihood. So we load up on other pass catchers for Drake May. We go Hunter Henry. We go Matt Collins. $700. That's enough for Jeremy Ruckert. If you wanted to do that, I mentioned he was playing a decent amount of snaps. Or if you wanted to get a little bit more balanced, you can take out Matt Collins, put back in Mason Taylor, and then you got enough for Kyle Williams once again. You can put it back in Ty Johnson, $3,000, last guy in. Again, I don't want to do three jets on 3-3 builds, so I'd probably leave the salary and do that. Maybe go up from Hunter Henry. You can go to Matt Collins like I was trying to do earlier. Still $700 remainder. That's fine. That's fun to do. Let's put haven't put any Patriots defense in the line, so let's see how uncomfortable it makes it if you're going to go that route. We'll put Drake May back in at captain. Put Stephon Diggs back in. This time, you're probably not going to be able to afford Breece Hall, so let's go down to Mason Taylor. $5,800 per. That's pretty easy, self-explanatory. If you wanted to go Matt Collins, Hunter Henry, $400 remainder, 5-1 build. Pretty solid, cheap bring back. You got Patriot D. That might be my favorite line so far, if I'm being honest. And say you're a little more uncomfortable because you don't trust Matt Collins off his big game, similar to what we said with Demario Douglas this past week. Go down to a kicker. Nick Folk can have the same upside as Matt Collins, Andy Borregales. Maybe they kick a little bit more extra points and field goals. I mean, that won't hurt either, going that route. Go all the way down. maybe opened up a little bit more. I'm not playing Demario Douglas. I'm not even giving that look, but you can still put in Matt Collins instead. $1,000 remainder. Just saying Tyler Johnson outscores Mason Taylor is basically the difference in this line. That's fine. Like I said, I don't recommend the Patriots defense being a captain. I don't know if the upside will be there. I think the floor is there for sure. A 10 to 12, I feel comfortable saying that, but 10 to 12 for 66, that's not enough to be captain viable in my opinion. Like, Eagle defense last night on the Showdown, Monday Night Showdown, where they scored about 12. They were $3,800. I don't know why I didn't even consider them or even think about them, but that ends up working out in a big way. But when you're $2,800 more, that's flex viable. Like I said, it's not captain viable. So they would need a defensive score or a pitch a shutout to get there. Last look, let's do one more cheap captain. I mean, any of these guys, we'll do a Stephon Diggs captain look just for shits and giggles. But any of these guys, you can paint a picture of why they're a viable captain. You're looking at upside and stuff like that. So this time, Trayvon Henderson isn't the guy to go to. Maybe Breece Hall inherits 5, 6, 7 catches, and that's how he gets there and outscores Trayvon Henderson. And then you got to load up on Patriot receivers from here. So that's Tyler Johnson. Maybe that's enough for Hunter Henry. That's not how you do Patriot receivers. You go to Matt Collins, maybe. You got $1,900 remainder, almost enough for Kyle Williams. But maybe that's down to, since you're already at 4 total Patriots, you can go down to Arian Smith, who's been on the field a lot, Isaiah Williams, John Mechie. I can't tell you a dog in the fight with any of these guys. They're all going to have a target or 2 or 3. It depends on if they catch them all. So got to catch them all like Pikachu, right? So put Arian Smith in there, 4-2 build. Like I said, I think that's a similar way to get different. Biggest thing is put Drake May in every single line and figure it out. I don't think he's a must at captain, but you got to play him. Just make others pay the rake and just see what happens from there. But with that said, guys, that's all I got for you. We appreciate you tuning in. Let us know how you're attacking this slate. We're going to be posting our final lines in the Discord roughly an hour before lock. So just vibe with us and let us know how you're feeling about this slate. It is an ugly slate on paper, but at the same time, those sometimes can end up being the best slates. Even in blowouts, it just doesn't matter. You just got to find the nuts in some way, shape, or form. Find ways to get different. So thank you so much, guys, for turning it. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Be sure to check out our Power Rankings video that we released yesterday. We got another first look for Maine coming out on Friday and all the college content that we've been posting as well. Get in Discord, show us some of your first looks, some of your prop lines and all that stuff. We're excited to see how this Week 11 slate turns out. So until then, we will see you guys on the next one.